West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel and Santokie here, and with me as ever is my partner in crime, Santokie Nagilendran. Santokie, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, Mash. We're really out here, end of summer, coming towards the end of summer. And it's also the day after the curry chicken derby. Trinbago going to Amazon Warriors. Amazon Warriors took the licks, held the L. I'm not even wearing a cricket shirt today. I had to jump to football with the Golden Jaguars going to football. I couldn't wear my Amazon Warriors shirt today after the licks we took. But Mash, we're here, as always with CCP to look at the wider context of things. So rather than look at, match by match performances, we're looking at a bigger theme. And one thing that stood out to me was looking at CPL so far. We've obviously had, Imran Tahir. He took a 5-4 the first time in his career in a T20 match, 46 years old. And then looking at yesterday, the Trinbago match, I looked at the top four, the four of the top six. We had Colin Monroe, who's 38, Alex Hales, who's 36, Kyron Pollard, who's 38, I think, and Andre Russell, who's 37. Colin Monroe subsequently is the top run scorer at the moment in CPL. Tahir's the top wicket taker. And it's just led to this wider question, Mash. Should a franchise tournament be dominated so much by veteran players? So by veteran, I mean anyone over 35. It's not saying those players can't play. We all know sports is advanced and, players are playing longer. But with CPL at the moment, it just seems like Andre Fletcher as well. He's 37, I think, or 38. He's in the top 3 run scorers as well.
Johnson Charles.
Should a franchise tournament, I get you're going to have senior players, but to the extent where CPL at the moment is being dominated completely by veteran players who aren't, and as you made a valid point on one of your live shows as well, with someone like a Tahir or a Monroe, it's not like they're in other franchise leagues bossing it as well. They're specifically doing it in CPL. Is that a major problem for CPL as a tournament? The fact that we've got these players who essentially are almost exclusively playing CPL, coming towards the very end of their careers and still dominating it in what's meant to be a premier domestic competition. Mash, your thoughts. Do we have too many veterans being star performers at the moment in CPL?
Well, the first answer is, and the most obvious answer is yes. We got way too many older, experienced former internationals who are running roughshod over CPL. They're the way they're mashing up CPL is like when Stone Cold's music hits and they're just hitting pure stunners on everybody, right? So, like, like when the veterans, in fact, you and I were talking, I think you and I were talking earlier on today about various things around this kind of era of T20 cricket and so on and so forth. But what's happening in CPL is that because the younger guys don't get chances, it's like in wrestling when you have like a young up-and-coming talent, and but when they come up against the main eventer, they just get squashed. And then the fans don't see them as serious.
Yeah, that was a good point you made there. What's the era called where Stone Cold Steve Austin came through in WWF? Where he came to prominence? What did they call it?
He came in just before the Attitude Era, but the Attitude Era is defined by Austin.
So that's a good point because Imran Tahir made his debut in 1997.
How long ago that was?
Imran Tahir came in just before the Attitude Era.
So Imran Tahir is as old as the Montreal Screwjob,
That is absolute. When I saw that, I thought that is absolutely wild. But yeah, Mash, I think that's a really good comparison. I think at the moment with CPL, obviously they've tried with the breakout league, right, to try and get youths in. But I feel like that's come a bit too late now. It's almost as if we're in this trajectory where a whole generation of players have missed out. And so really for the breakout league to have an effect, it's got to run for about 5 or 6 seasons for that to take effect. So at the moment, as you said, it's a closed shop where the youth men aren't getting chances. And the ones that are, because they're so inexperienced, they're coming in to get squashed. Like there's nothing else they can do. Whereas like a Tahir or a David Visa, who's captain of St. Lucia at age 40, they know exactly what to do. They played CPL year in, year out. They've got the experience. They're coming in and just dominating it. But from a neutral perspective, or even just from a fan perspective, even if you support a franchise, surely it's not exciting to watch it when you're seeing this kind of uneven playing field at the moment.
Yeah, so do you know, I'm glad you've made that point, because a lot of people are going to watch this episode. They're going to get in the comments. Some are going to get upset, etc. But if you're a fan, like a proper fan of CPL, and you're jumping up and down celebrating, I think that makes you a dunce. Because those... But hear me out, right? Here's why a proper fan of CPL is a dunce. Because those said same fans will be the first people to cuss when West Indies don't win T20 matches, right?
Exactly.
And they're not connecting the dots between our premier domestic T20 competition is a competition for old men who are either retired from West Indies duty, can't help West Indies progress, have played for West Indies bare times already and not really moved the dial and done anything if they are still available. And then when we then play as a West Indies unit and everyone's like, why are we so shit? How did Australia zip us 5-0? Well, look at our premier domestic competition. What do you mean, why are we so terrible? Our domestic competition doesn't even do anything to elevate any next talent. Here's a really good point, Santokie. Check this out.
Yeah.
Kofi James, here's a really good example to use. Kofi James was the top run scorer in the Breakout League, right? He batted, he opened throughout the whole of the Breakout League and was the top run scorer. Brilliant strike rate, took some wickets as well. In this CPL so far, he's played one match for Barbados Royals, and that was at like number 6 or number 7. To me, Santokie, that in a nutshell encapsulates the problem. What the hell was the point of the Breakout League then?
Exactly. What are we trying to do here? And I think with CPL, I think when it started, there was definitely a buzz, and there was a valid claim that CPL was, a second tier, like one of the strongest tiers behind the IPL, one of the strongest franchise leagues behind the IPL. At the moment, even the derby last night, I heard nobody talking about it. Even in England, I would get messages from family and friends saying, "Oh, Trinidad playing Guyana." There was no buzz about it, and I think that's obviously part of the spectacle. The fact that we're not seeing exciting young West Indian players coming through. So, as West Indian fans, what are we there to get excited about? Because for me, if I'm Trinidadian, obviously it's nice to see Trimbago win, but you're watching Alex Hales and Colin Munro dominate.
Alex Hales and Colin Munro, them two are mashing up our premier. When I saw the score yesterday and I saw Munro and Hales had mashed up Guyana, and I was like, them man are 37 and 38 respectively, and they're mashing up our premier domestic competition. We know Guyana are going to be in the final 4, possibly the final, and these two men are just mashing every. What it is. It's embarrassing,
Yeah, even another one, even Guyana. Obviously, we got Tahir, middle of the order. We got Moeen Ali, who's 38. Moeen Ali, obviously a great player. Put respect on his name, but 38 years old. He's retired from domestic cricket. Man even does his own podcast. He's doing a podcast at the moment every week. He's a podcast guy. But then he's flying out to CPL and laying it down for Guyana Amazon Warriors. Like, it doesn't make any... It's not good for West Indies cricket. And I think, as you said, we got to put the dots together, Mash. As much as I get, like, everyone... If you're from Antigua or Trinidad or Barbados, you want to see your franchise do well. But surely you want to see well with a core unit of young West Indian players. And that will essentially have a knock-on effect on the West Indies side. Because at the moment, West Indies side are down bad. CPL, if you're looking at new talent, is down bad. If somebody watched cricket and said, all right, name me 5 guys who you think are going to be top tier guys in the next 5 years. I can name Drew, Andrew, Akeem, or Gust. After that, I'll be scratching my head. I'll be thinking, who's even had enough chances out here to get that? And that's a massive. Let's
bring up Akeem, because I think Akeem is an example, and this is where I think we should take the conversation next, Santokie. Akeem Orgis, St. Lucia, is a really good example of what should be happening, right? Last year, and I have to say credit to Darren Sammy for this and all of his backroom staff. Now, obviously, Akeem is St. Lucian. Maybe that plays a role in why Sammy was so fine with giving Akeem the role as well. But last year in CPL, St. Lucia won it. Akeem batted number 3 for St. Lucia pretty much through the whole tournament. He actually played 99% or 95% of St. Lucia's games on the way to them winning it. He batted number 3. Now, if you study Akeem's innings last year, he basically was given the role at number 3, just bat through the innings. His strike rate wasn't anything too impressive, like 110 maybe, something like that. But he played a bit of a glue role. I'll be the guy that everyone can anchor around, and I'll just try bat through the innings, right? Now, at that stage, Akeem was like 20 going on 21. This year now, Akeem's still in the team, but now his game has expanded. The other day he hit 70-something or 33 balls. I think today he's hit a 20-something or 15 balls in their win against Antigua earlier today, right? So Akeem Orgies, yes, he's a talented batter in and of himself. He's gone through the West Indies Academy. We know I think he hit 300 the other day or whatever. We know he's a talented batter. But Sammy and the St. Lucia Kings actually gave him a role and crucially believed in him. Now, this year, his game has expanded because he's already played a season of CPL. So the question for me, Santokie, is St. Lucia has shown that it's possible to play a youngster and just give him a role and say, you know what, no matter what, you're playing the whole season, right? And it's benefited Akeem's game. What do you think, Santokie, is the reason why all the other franchises are so reluctant to do something like that?
I think it's just because they're in the results business. They just want to get their results and get through. And if you think about it, majority of coaches are going to think, hold on, I'm only going to be in this role maybe 2 seasons, 3 seasons max. I just need to perform as well as I can and get experienced players in. However, my thing with CPL is, right, there's 6 teams, 4 go through to the playoffs, yeah? There's not really that much of a risk. Unless you go on a down bad run, the odds are you've got a very good chance of getting through to the playoffs. So for me, it's worth taking that, especially if you've got like a West Indian coach, like a Darren Sammy at St. Lucia. It's worth doing that for from a regional point of view. But to answer your question, I just think they don't want to. You essentially want players who can guarantee or maximize your chance of a win, right? And that goes with experienced players, preferably overseas players, and there's no real incentive for a head coach to play a youth man, basically, unless they just see that they're like a extremely good talent, like a Jewel Andrew, and will put them in. Other than that, there's not really an incentive, which is the problem, I guess, with if you're looking at it from a developmental point of view, franchise competitions are never really meant to do that. But with CPL being our premier domestic competition, even if you look at it from the other side, surely it's in CPL's interest to develop West Indian players, young West Indian players, because in 5 years, let's say Jewel Andrew goes on to become a world-class player, he's your poster boy for CPL. He's the guy, they're doing the headlines, similar to what Chris Gale, Dwayne Bravo, Pollard, and the Rhyme were in years gone by. But the fact we've not developed megastars in CPL means surely it's harder to market, harder to get outside interest, outside viewers. CPL previously was targeting like Indian viewers, that market. It helps if you've got global stars who are tearing it apart. And Mash, today we were having a convo on WhatsApp, and I said to you, in the upcoming IPL draft, whenever it takes place before the end of the year, there's no current West Indies international players. Paul Ann's retired, Dre Russell's retired, who are going to be headliners in the IPL draft. Whereas before, West Indians dominated the draft. They were getting $1 million deals. They were the big shots. Now there's no one, and I think that just reflects how we haven't developed players. And as much as CPL is a franchise tournament, they also need to be accountable because that's the premier T20 competition, right? There should be people coming through that, West Indians coming through that in the last 5-6 years, in their mid-20s now, who are superstars because of CPL, but that just hasn't happened, Mash.
People like David Cameron and his predecessors need to answer questions as to why we signed off a 50-year contract for CPL, because when CPL was first promoted as a concept, the whole point of it, and in its early years, it was box office, like you say, right? But when it was first promoted as a concept, it was, this is really going to benefit West Indies cricket. And we are not coming for CPL. We are just willing to call out what is obvious, which is that, and we've said it, you and I have said it now for the last 3 years going, CPL is going to have a very big problem. I wouldn't even say 5 years, Santokie. I'm saying 2 years. Because look at the names you've called. David Visa will be 42. What, man's still coming here, right? Tahir will be 48. What, Guyana's still going to play Tahir at 48. Pollard will be 40. Russell will be 39. Narayan will be 39, right? Munro will be 40. Alex Hales will be 39. Moeen Ali will be 40. I'm just calling up. Johnson Charles will be 39. Andre Fletcher will be 30. I'm just calling up. That's 2 years, I'm calling a bag of man who surely in 2 to 3 years' time can't still be the headline acts in CPL. So if you're CPL, you have to look at the rules you've set, because 5 overseas players can play this year in CPL in a team as long as you play 1 breakout league player. But let me give you a stats, Santokie, right? So Trinidad's team, which is the oldest team in the tournament, they played Nathan Edward for 1 match. Then obviously he's never been seen since. Since then, McKenny Clark has played 4 matches for TKR. This is so that they can play their overseas players. He's played 4 matches. In those 4 matches, Santokie, he's bowled 3 overs total. So what's he doing in the team? So they've picked a breakout league bowler to just stand in the field. Like, come on, man. This can't be what we're doing. The CPL... CPL need... Badesi was one of the best bowlers in breakout league. He's played 4 games out of St. Kitts 7, I think, right? Ashmead Ned, 2 games. Jadea Blades, who's a West Indies international, has played 1 game for Guyana Amazon Warriors, and he's a West Indies international, right?
Yeah, I'm sure Afanase has only played 4 games for St. Kitts. Maybe
right. Mikhail Louis played 2 games, right? So a bag of waste overseas men are coming over into CPL. Yes, I know they're dominating, but they're coming over to CPL, getting the premier roles in our own domestic competition, and West Indian young talent is either not even getting on the field, or if they are getting on the field, they're playing secondary roles to old overseas man. It don't make no sense, Santo.
Yeah,
it don't make no sense for the future. It don't make no sense for now. It don't make no sense for the long-term viability of CPL. So if TKR win the competition this year because they look like the best team, or if Guyana win, or if St. Lucia win, great. Okay, cool, good. Everyone in Guyana jump up and down. Everyone in Trinidad jump up and down. St. Lucia jump up and down. But ask yourself this question: what benefit did it bring for West Indies cricket?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm looking at the stats now. So Colin Monroe is the top run scorer. Tim Seifert from New Zealand, second run scorer. And then Andre Fletcher, who turns 38 in about 2 months, is the third. Wicket takers, they're all overseas players.
Yeah, all overseas.
So what are we? Obviously, like we said, we're not. This isn't a cuss out of CPL. We're just calling it how it is. If you've got a Premier Caribbean domestic tournament, what are we developing? Who are going to be the stars? And that's surely got to be massive warning signs for CPL, unless they haven't thought about that in the next, as you said, 2 years. We could be seeing it happen, and we can come back to these clips and say, "Look, we warned people 2 years ago this is going to happen." Yeah, you're going to make a point.
The question here is, Santokie, and maybe here's the harshest thing of all: how at the moment, then, how is CPL any different to like a UAE, like, you know, those leagues where they have no domestic players playing prominent roles? Because, like, so you see, like in the Major League Cricket, the American players, they're in there, but they're not the major players. They're like just some any man, and bare overseas men are the star attractions in the Major League Cricket, right? Those type of things only happen in associate cricket, where the home players aren't the major turns because they're not very good, or they're not given opportunities to showcase if they can be very good, because it's promoted around the quality of the overseas players, right? CPL's in danger of not having the strength in depth of home players to justify the tournament. If we like at the moment, other than the crowd, what's to say that CPL couldn't just be some Dubai league because of the imbalance between domestic players and overseas players?
Part of me also thinks it's complacency on CPL's part, because the main selling point of CPL's biggest party in sport, right? So the fans come out across all the islands or nations in Guyana's case, and they create a mad atmosphere, and that still happens today because fans in the Caribbean are desperate to see their franchise play, right? So if you go to Guyana, even if Tahir and Murray and Ali are laying it down, you're going to get a packed crowd and a good atmosphere. So I think the organisers might have taken it for granted that, listen, we're still going to get big crowds regardless of who plays. So maybe we don't need to place too much emphasis on, developing headliners, West Indian talent, Guyanese talent, to kind of be main attraction stars, because people will come out regardless and make it the biggest party in the sport. It'll be interesting to see, like, in terms of attendances, if CPL, what the attendances have been like. We're told every year that the viewing numbers have gone up. I don't know sort of if that's overseas based, but in terms of fan perspective from the region, this would be a good point. If you're living in the islands at the moment, comment below. What does CPL still have the same hype and momentum as it did, let's say, 5 years ago, or have you seen a noticeable difference? It'd be interesting to know, because I just think they've taken it for granted that fans will always turn up and create the biggest party in sport. But at some point, even these fans are going to be, like you said, in 2 years, if Pollard's retired, Dre Russell's retired, Narayan's retired, if you're a Trimbago fan, who are you going to be cheering? Jade Gooley? Is Jade Gooley going to be the main guy? Like, I don't understand. There's no stars being created at the moment to fill that void. And it'd be interesting to see if it does remain the biggest party in sport, or what CPL's... They've taken the first steps by having the breakout league match. But like you said, we're not seeing any sort of effect of that happening, because the guys from the breakout league aren't getting sustained runs. And the breakout league just started this year.
But clearly they know that rules need to be in place, or maybe it was Cricket West Indies who insisted on it, because in the breakout league this year there were certain rules in place, like you had to pick a leg spinner in every game. The leg spinner had to bowl at least 3 overs in every game. What was one of the other rules they said? You could only have 3 players over the age of 27 in your team. The rest had to be under the age of 25, etc., or under the age of 27. So, and that's breakout league was in conjunction between Cricket West Indies and CPL. I'm not saying that CPL should implement rules as stringent as that, but clearly, I think they at least need to next year, that if their rules going to stay the same, where it's like, right, you can play all your overseas players as long as you play one breakout league player. I think the rule has to be that if you play a breakout league batter, he's got to bat in the top 3. If you play a breakout league bowler or a youngster, he has to bowl his full allocation. Otherwise, what's the point? Like, because otherwise they're just going to stand in the field for the whole match doing nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, man. So, yeah, I think there's massive issues with CPL. And I don't see how you're suddenly going. It needs a long-term plan in place. Like you said, having a breakout league player play in the top 3 and playing a sustained amount of games would help. Even that's going to take years for them to become major stars. But I just think, Mash, it just points to sort of what we've done in a previous episode. With the GOAT generation gone, I think there was also an assumption, and I think this applies to all franchise leagues and world cricket, that, West Indies is a talent factory. We'll just develop more goats to keep coming on, and that hasn't happened. And so we haven't got players with the same sort of aura. Like I said, 10 years. I remember the first CPL draft. Guyana Amazon Warriors, for instance, they drafted Sunil Narayan, even like a Danish Ramlin, Machel and Santokie. They were big players, right? And they were all West Indian players, and every franchise had it. Obviously, you had Pollard when he went to Barbados. It was a big thing, and that was because Pollard was such a big player in Trinidad. And there were West Indian narratives within the CPLs, right? Every franchise was West Indian dominated. There were West Indian stories, West Indian drama. At the moment, like you said, Mash, if I turned on a CPL match, I'm not seeing any sort of difference other than the crowd. I'm not seeing any difference on pitch to like an ILT20 UAE league, for instance, or anything like that, because we're not seeing any sort of distinct West Indianness to the teams or dominating. And so it's a shame to see, because CPL is our premier competition. But I think that's just a reflection of how, as we always say, we haven't united as a region to put our heads together and think what's the best way to develop players. And CPL hasn't done that either. And we sort of hit this wall at the moment where internationally, domestically, T20, Test, ODI cricket, we're down bad across everywhere, and nobody seems to have a solution.
Yeah, and the final thing I would just say, something that CPL needs to be careful about, right? Obviously, the cricket calendar is completely screwed, but something CPL needs to be mindful of. Until they fix a cricket calendar in world cricket, which doesn't look likely anytime soon, CPL is going to increasingly be in a squashed market between the 100 and Major League Cricket, right? And as things currently stand, Santokie, if 100 continually overlaps against CPL, or Major League Cricket overlaps with CPL for me will be the loser ultimately in this, because once you lose the West Indian star power like the Pollards, etc., in a couple of years, what are you, unless you then do what UAE League does, which is basically say your whole team can be overseas players, what do CPL do next? Because as much as we can cuss the old men being in it, they're still top of the runs charts. So the quality therefore must go down then when the youngsters finally do come in.
I was going to say also, we're just pointing to the overseas players. It's not also the fact that they're old. It's just the fact that they're not the top tier overseas players coming either, right? They're further down the chain. The top tier guys who are playing, IPL, PSL, Big Bash, they're not coming to CPL because the 100, we'll see from next year, the 100 will offer more money because it's been taken over by IPL franchises. MLC already offers big money. So CPL, if it can't attract overseas players, because overseas franchise cricket is the nature of it, right? Overseas players will go where the money is. They don't have any sort of loyalty to a franchise.
Which means that CPL then is only shopping in 2 overseas markets. The guys like David Visa, who, with respect to them, as good as they are or not, they're older, so they're not heavily in demand in the top tier leagues. Or you're looking at unheard of players, or not really like, so some teams got a guy called Devon Jacobs or something. I'm not saying he's completely unheard of, but what I mean is he's not known yet properly on the circuit. So then you're picking up guys like that, right? And then once you lose your West Indian star power, who then is your star power?
Yeah.
Do you get where I'm coming from?
Mash, when I watch the SAT20, I think that's essentially what CPL should be, right?
Yeah.
SAT20's got the crowds are going crazy at the matches, but every team, like whether it's Aidan Markram, I think he's at Cape Sunrisers.
Yeah. All the teams have a top South African player,
and then
but a current top South African player.
And then guys like a Faf du Plessis, who's a great player, he's not a main event guy. He's just there to support because that's how it should be. Du Plessis shouldn't be a main event guy in the South Africa T20 because he's 40, but he's there to support the youth, man. And then you got guys coming up like Brevis and all these guys coming through. But every team has a distinct identity that's based around South African players.
Yeah.
And overseas players complement it and the crowds react to that. That's what CPL should have been, but like you said, we're veering more towards it being an ILT20 because really and truly, Mash, I know we've got a congested schedule, so it's hard to follow. But who outside of the Caribbean is following CPL at the moment? I don't think it's going to be a small minority of fans because there's so much cricket going on, and CPL doesn't have a selling point. Whereas I think even 5 years ago, CPL was where you'd go to see, all right, who are the next West Indian guys? Oh, this Brandon King guy's at Guyana Amazon Warriors. He's doing well. He might be. You kept an eye on it because it was where you were going to see.
It's where you'd see the next up and coming young talent. But now you're not even certain. You're not seeing beyond like your Jewel Andrews that you can't watch a game and go, oh, what about this guy? Because this guy ain't even playing.
Put this in the last. So the headlines I recall off the top of my head are the Tahir 5-4. Colin Monroe done something. I forgot what Colin Monroe done. Alex Hales passed 14,000 runs or something like that. Kieran Pollard did the same.
Seifert hit a century today.
Yeah, Tim Seifert hit the second fastest century today. 4 of those are overseas players who are over 35, and then the others, Kieran Pollard, who's nearly 38. Or is 38. So what are the big stories? What are the big stories coming in from young West Indian players? And there's none. And that's why we're going to see CPL's already fallen down the franchise ladder. And I can't see Mash at this point. I think he's lost track. I think the game's gone past it in terms of coming back up. I can't see it ever coming back up because the finances aren't there. Yeah, go on.
The finance I just said, and the thing we haven't really properly touched on is, and then this is why, and I think I said it earlier on, but I think we should end with it, is this is why then, if people connect the dots of what we said in this episode, why would you expect, like, there's going to be a couple dunces going into next year's T20 World Cup expecting West Indies to go far, but based on what you and I have covered in this episode, why would you then expect West Indies to overperform in a World Cup? Like the pool that Darren Sammy has to pick from, when you realize that the older guys, most of them are retired or past their prime at an international level, and then we don't have no young guys coming up to challenge the current guys, literally the team that Sammy picks is the only people we got when you really think of it. Like there's no one out there who can really come into the squad.
Yeah, and do you remember, like, even when was it before the 2021 World Cup, we recorded episodes where CPL, we were like, all right, cool, guys are going to come through and they're going to make the World Cup squad because CPL's where you develop. If I was Sammy now, let's say if I had to pick the 2 highest run scorer openers in CPL to play in the World Cup, we'd be opening with Johnson, Charles and Spiceman.
Yeah, again, that's exactly it. Again. So when people cuss and say, what's Johnson Charles still doing there? Well, look what he does in our premier domestic competition. Johnson Charles has no competition. He actually has no competition outside of Brandon King and Evan Lewis. And yes, I know Sammy's trying to make Jewel Andrew open, but Charles, I hate to say it, Santokie, but Charles is in the West Indies team on merit because there's no one else.
Yeah, this is what I mean. There's no one else. Charles is dominating. Like you said, they're trying to make Jewel Andrew an opener. I know today they tried Amir Jangu as an opener. Rakeem Cornwall you've got there, but none of them are coming close to Johnson Charles. So it is what it is, Mash. I think at the moment, I can't see, because of the 100 expanding and getting financial investment and MLC, I just think CPL's lost pace. I can't, unless it moved in the calendar, which is impossible. I just think it's going to be very, very hard to, 1, attract quality overseas players who are in their prime, and 2, focus on developing West Indian players. So it'd be very interesting to see in like 5 years what the status of CPL is. But at the moment, Mash, we can't say from a West Indian. Obviously, people say, "Oh, you guys are cussing CPL, you guys are haters." We're just looking at it from a West Indian perspective.
Yeah,
We're
just with the West Indies list. If we could have done this episode differently and just looked at it as, who could win CPL? Like, we could just leave this out, but we have to look at the bigger picture because we have to, because otherwise, what's the point of just every year going who can win when there's a bigger picture to consider?
Mash is even more down bad than me because I could come in here and say how Guyana Amazon was going to win CPL. Jamaica out here moving like Doppy, fam. There goes the CPL.
And Santokie, this is the funniest thing of all to me, and I keep saying it to people. The biggest nation in the Caribbean has ducked out from the tournament for 2 years. For 2 years. Imagine that. Just think about that. The island with the biggest population by far has just gone, yeah, we're not interested. Do you know how we said it last year, but thinking again this year, do you know how crazy that is?
The thing is, though, like, all right, if you're trying to market, so the thing is, right, at the moment, CPL is not developing regional players, but if you were trying to market it to overseas players, if I was a fan in India, England, America, wherever, and I'm watching a Caribbean Premier League, my first instinct, naturally, just because of how it is all right, where's Jamaica? Like, I want to watch Jamaica. And then if you're not seeing it there, you're thinking, hold on, what's going on here? So again, it's a massive blow, a self-inflicted blow for the region in our premier domestic competition to not have the island with the biggest sort of cultural impact and sporting impact as well.
Craziness. And that's not about Jamaican people, because if somebody will hear that and think we're trying to say that Jamaica's best, not at all. It's just it would be like, it is no different, Santokie, to the English Premier League having no teams from London in the competition, like, because that's the equivalent. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that. Like, you just turn on the Premier League, it's like, wait, where's all the London clubs? Oh, they don't want to be in it. You'd think that was crazy, right?
So yeah, I think there's a whole host of problems. It's not going to get solved this season, but I'll be interested to see if they do get solved or what's sort of going to happen. Because at the end of the day, who are you placing the responsibility on at this point in time? Is it CPLs or franchise organizers to do it? I think it is, because it helps their own product as well, developing West Indian players, and they sort of have a moral duty almost to sort of help the region as the premier regional competition. But we've been saying it for a few years now, and it'll be interesting to see, like you said, in the next few years, sort of what happens. But Mash, we'll wrap it up there. We thought, let's just do a 30-minute episode looking at wider issues of CPL. Comment below. What do you make of the state of CPL? Are you following it? If you're overseas, are you staying up at night to watch it? If you're in the Caribbean, have you been going to games? Has the atmosphere changed? Is it still a lively must event in the region to go and watch the games? Let us know your opinions of CPL and where do you think it is going forward. It'd be interesting to get everyone's views. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe. You know, we're on Instagram, we're on X, we're on TikTok, we're on Blue Sky still, on Facebook. Most importantly, if you can donate, we've had a surge of donations as well in the last few weeks on patreon.com/CaribCricket. Every little helps, you know. For those of you following social media, you would have seen Mash was padded up. I don't know if he's trying to save West Indies cricket by taking matters into his own hand, but you know, funding all that, Mash, getting all your cricket equipment ready as well to try and save West Indies cricket. So on a serious note, keep out, you know, for some interesting announcements regarding Caribbean Cricket Podcast in the coming weeks. And I'll hand over to Mash for the final word.
Yeah, people, again, the descriptor below, you'll see all the various different links to upcoming news, things that you can subscribe to, Caribbean Cricket News, which we're launching very, very soon. Click on the link for that to find out about that. But as Santokie says, the most important thing you can do is help support the podcast. Go to Patreon, www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket. There's so many different tiers of entry to it, from the lowest to the highest in terms of what you can get. The merch hasn't arrived yet, people. I think it's arriving next week, early next week. So I'm chasing that up. Once it's out, I'll start taking pictures and stuff like that. Only Santokie gets a free one. And Santokie, his wife, and Jackson gets one. No one else. so look out for that merch coming soon. And if you can't support via Patreon, at the very least, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell to help the algorithm, people. Algorithm. I've been Machel and Santokie. Santokie's been Santokie, and we'll be back very, very soon.
West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.